My name is Julie Frink. I'm a member of the California Rare Fruit Growers and currently the avocado specialist for the California Rare Fruit Growers and curator of the avocado variety collection at South Coast Research Station. I'm going to be showing the most simple graft today. This is one that you can do all year round on seedlings. I am going to do it on avocado. You can also do it on apples and most other fruit trees, on roses and several other things. I do other grafting, but this is the one I've selected to show you today. Now the first thing we do with avocados, just put a lot of seeds in a pot and cover them with soil, and then they grow out to look like this. Then what I do is take each one out and put it in a gallon pot, and then they look more like this. Now this is a pretty scraggly pot, but we'll work with this. Now the next thing is to have some budwood. So here we have some good budwood. Now a good piece of budwood has lots of buds on it. If you don't find lots of buds on your bud stick or your Scion wood, you will not get any growth at all. You will just be putting a stick on a plant. Here is a piece of budwood that I picked this morning from our Charwell avocado tree. You can see that it has buds on it. We've had people bring Scion wood to our Scion wood exchanges or budwood, but no buds. You would not have any luck grafting if you picked a piece of wood that looks like this piece between my hands, because this doesn't have any good buds on it. So it would just not grow any tree at all. It would be putting a stick on a plant that is of no value. Now I'm going back to my budwood, my good budwood, which you could probably see the difference here. The first thing I do is wrap my piece of budwood with parafilm. Parafilm is a wax product. It's a laboratory supply, so you can get it at most places that sell laboratory supplies. What I do with the budwood is I start at the top of my bud stick and start wrapping and stretch this parafilm so that it goes around each bud and covers the entire bud stick. We want to keep the moisture inside. The buds will grow out of this product, so do not ever remove it once you put it on. So there we go. Is cut some more parafilm. This time I cut it a little longer and I fold it because I want it to be stronger. Now I take my clippers and I look at a place where this budwood will match the wood that I'm going to graft it onto. I'm looking for a good match by size because I want this budwood to be the same size as my rootstock that I'm going to graft it onto with this particular graft. So now we have a pretty good size match here. So what I'm going to do is take my clippers and put them at a very a good slant, as much slant as I can get, and clip. And there you see I cut off the top of this one, and with luck this bottom one will fit exactly on the rootstock. Then with my doubled parafilm, I hold this together with one hand. With the other, I wrap this parafilm and try to get it to be a perfect match. Wrap it around, stretch and pull, and then cover any areas that haven't been covered. Now that worked quite well. Sometimes it does not work. If this does not work, it would be because one side was cut like this, maybe, and the other side was cut like this, in which case they wouldn't match. Then you have to get your grafting knife out and make one side or the other match. Then you wrap it, and if the match is good, you probably will get a tree that grows that looks like the one I'm going to show you right now. Here is a tree that I did exactly like the one I just did. I did this one, let's see, 3 months ago. And you see what has happened in those 3 months. We have a little tree here. I did not wrap this with extra tape. I only used the parafilm because this was going to be at home where it would be relatively safe. Sometimes this isn't enough wrap. If I take these to our green scene sale, people tend to think this is a lot stronger than it really is. That's a pretty weak match because the only thing holding the top to the bottom is the new cells that grow from this cambium layer. This inside core wood is going to stay the way it is. It's not going to heal. So there's a very slim row of cells holding this together. Now when this tree grows larger, this part in the center that is still divided will be very small and you'll have a strong tree, but not right now. So if I were going to give this to somebody to plant in their yard or take it to the sale, I would wrap it with an extra row of wrapping just to stabilize it so that it won't break. Now, one thing that you really need to do when you graft these trees is to have a good system of marking them, because you may think you'll remember forever what you've just grafted, but chances are it won't take long and you won't be able to remember at all what that tree was. So you need a good marking pen, and the one that I like to use is white out, and this is what I do. I write on the pot, and this does not fade like permanent marker does. I've used permanent marker and then in a few months you have no clue what you just grafted. So this has been my best thing to use. This is white out, and I believe today is 12/23. I may be wrong. 06. So then I could always tell what date my graft took place.
My name is Denny Luby. I have been a California rare fruit grower for about 9 years. I have been grafting for most of that 9 years, and today I'm going to demonstrate a bark graft, or field graft as Julie calls it. It's on the trunk of a tree, a stump, and when you cut a tree down, you want the tree shorter or you want to change the cultivar. What we do is we'll graft the Scion wood, the type of wood that we want, onto the trunk of the tree. So today I have brought the trunk of the tree into this table for demonstration. This is what it looks like. First you want to start with a fresh cut, and then we'll look for a place on this that does not have any knots, and we will attach our Scion wood to the top of that. And then we will seal the top of the stump so it doesn't dry out until the wood starts growing. For that we will use Henry's 107. That gallon will last me my lifetime. This is it looks like mustard. It's actually Henry's 107, and I will take it and squirt it on the top at the end of the demonstration to seal it off. First way we start is to find a good spot on the trunk of the tree or on the stump where we have flat with no blemishes. We can make a slice in there. And at that time, I'm going to cut right down here an inch or two, and I'm trying to just get through the bark, and we only want to go into the bark. It will stop at the wood in most cases. Depending on the size of the tree, this may be up to 1/4 of an inch. And then in a time like that, you sometimes need to use a hammer or chisel or something to get a cut into the wood. Now you can see as I twist my knife here, I hope this will slip, and you can see it splitting. Now we'll put that back and prepare the Scion wood. I've collected a little bit this morning from a Fuerte avocado, and I will pick something like this. On the Scion wood, there is large buds. These are large and round. They're probably flower buds, but we have discovered that flowers will fall off and we'll get a growth bud underneath, and these buds will be our new tree. They'll come out and in a couple of months, and we'll have a tree started, and I'll show you some that have successful grafts in the last few months. First, I'll start again with the parafilm, just like Julie did, and I'll wrap the buds up so they won't dry out. This parafilm can be bought from eBay for 40 inches for $1 with free shipping if you don't want to buy 250 feet for, I think, $25. You can see I'm covering up the buds. These are all going to be kept moist through the few months that this is trying to grow. Now I'm going to take wood from this side and from this side at a little bit of an angle so it will fit right down into there between the wood and the bark, the little split that I had made earlier. I have cut the bark off of both sides of the Scion. If you'll notice, right here, there's a little bit of bark left here, and on the other side, there's even less. It's shaved right down to nothing right there towards the end. I'll put this in just like that. So the wide part here is on this side, and the little shaved end is down in the crack of the tree. Now, if you can imagine what it looks like in there, the little thin part of the Scion wood is on this side, and the wider wedge is on this side. Now we got to keep that from drying out. We have white wrap here. We have a plastic wrap. You probably recognize this from Home Depot. You go down and buy that for $2 or $3, I think. What I'll do with that is start wrapping right here. Pull it up real tight. Because this is a large trunk, I can pull this just as tight as I can. And I want to get it all the way up to the top and all the way down to the bottom of my cut, which was right about there. Any kind of knot that you can get tied, and we're going to cut it later. This is just a square knot. I think it's square. Now you can still see a little bit of space in here if I can get the sun right. The space here and the space here. We don't want our Henry's 107 to go in there, so I will use a piece of wood or a piece of parafilm or anything just to prevent that from going from the Henrys to go down in that little space. And then this is the last thing because this gets on everything. So here, that won't wash off. This seals up the wood so it doesn't dry out. And that's just about it. Now, one thing we do have to do is label this. And Julie uses the whiteout. I have used that also, but I also like to use labels that keep for a long time. And I will use a pencil or ink pen to write on that what it is. And this is a Fuerte, F-U-E-R. And the date, 12/22/6. And then I'll just twist this on loosely someplace. And later on when this starts growing, then I'll put it on tighter. You can see a couple of successes here. This graft I did, this is what it looks like a year or two later. You can see how I split the bark, and this is all grown since March of '03. So that's 3 years of growth. Now it's important to stake these. If you don't stake these kind of grafts, because they have such an established root system, you're going to get a tree that when this gets up 5 feet above this little area right here is weak and it'll break. So you'll need to stake this. And I've lost a few grafts by not staking. You don't need a full-sized trunk to do this. You can also do it on a seedling. And you can see the different sizes here. If you can't match your Scion with the rootstock, then this is the kind of bark you do. And I peeled, if you can see this one, I peeled the bark back and put this in, and I put that in a year ago. So it grows slow. When it gets into a bigger pot, it'll take off, but that's a successful graft there also. And that's about it for the bark graft.
My name is Don Winterstein. I'm currently the Vice Chairman of the Orange County Chapter of California Rare Fruit Growers. My interest in gardening has been lifelong, but it got accelerated quite a lot when I retired about 7 years ago and got a fairly large piece of land in a utility easement behind my house where I now care for about 80 trees. I didn't do much grafting, and the others on the video are much more experienced at that than I am, but I think I have a few suggestions, a few differences in the way of doing a cleft graft that might make it easier for those who do cleft grafts rarely and not very many. So my method will require more tools than people ordinarily use for doing a cleft graft, and it will be slower. The advantage is that it takes less skill, in my opinion at least. So now is the time to get started on the grafting. I'm going to show pretty much a standard cleft graft done in a slightly different way. What I'm going to be grafting is jujube, and I'm going to be grafting a Lee jujube onto a commercial rootstock. And I obtain the commercial rootstock from jujube trees that are growing in my garden. They send up these sprouts all over the place, and instead of chopping them out as I used to do, I now leave a few to grow and get large enough to graft, and they can make new plants. I just dig them out, put them in pots, and graft the desired variety onto them. So the first thing, well, I also have a piece of Scion wood that I cut this morning from an existing jujube tree, and what I'll do is, first of all, I look for 2 buds on buds that are widely spaced like this. It's only necessary to have 2, so there's one here and there's one here under this side branch. I cut off the side branch, and then I can cut it off up here at the top. So now this is my piece of Scion wood that I'll be grafting onto this rootstock. One of the innovations that I'm going to talk about is the use of a caliper. Most grafters just sight on the 2 and just guess or estimate by eye what the right diameter is. I prefer to eliminate that guesswork by actually measuring the thing with a caliper, by seeing what diameter my scion wood is, and then finding a place on the rootstock that would match that, and that turns out to be about here. So then I'll cut it right there. Now, before I do any cutting, if I remember, I usually soak a piece of paper towel with alcohol to act as a disinfectant. Then I wipe the cutting tools with the alcohol, with the paper towel soaked in alcohol, to disinfect them. And that would go for my knife also, which is just a standard utility tool with a razor blade. So now the tools are suitably disinfected, and now I measure the scion wood to see what the diameter is, and I measure the rootstock to see where I should cut. So that tells me I should cut right about here. And there it is. Next step is to make a vertical cut in the rootstock. To do this, I introduce what I believe is a tack hammer, a very light hammer, and my cutting knife, which is this utility knife with the razor blade, and I just tap lightly on this to make my cut as deeply as I like and in a very well-controlled manner. So I'm not relying on my arm muscles to be able to stop when I want, but I'm relying on small taps of the hammer. So the knife blade has now been driven in almost the full width. For a piece this thick, it needs to be a little deeper than it would for a small piece. And also, when I insert the wedge, which I'll be making in a minute, it's probably going to make the cut go even deeper. So now the next step is to prepare the scion wood. And to do this, I make a wedge by taking wood off both sides, and I try to be careful to make this as even as possible. And I keep checking. This is the part, the remaining part that requires some skill. And when the piece is this big, it can take a fair amount of whittling. So what I'm trying to do is make a wedge like this. This is just about right there, but it's a little too thick on this side, so I have to straighten it out. And now it's approximately right. The next step is to wrap the scion wood. I use the parafilm like just about everybody else and start at the very top and stretch it around so that it covers the whole piece of scion wood. This is in order to keep the scion wood from drying out before it has a chance to grow. And I leave a piece on the end to wrap around the graft. So the next step is to insert the scion wood into the rootstock, into the cut that I made before. One advantage of a cleft graft is that you have 4 possible opportunities to get the cambium layers matching, 2 on each side of the rootstock. So now it's been inserted, so the next thing to do is just to keep wrapping the parafilm around the graft to try to make this as tight to air and water as possible. When I get down to the bottom, I just start going back up, stretching the parafilm as I go, and try to make a double layer around the actual graft. So we're just about done. The final step is to give this some rigidity. The parafilm is not going to hold this as rigidly as we'd like. If a bird came along and sat on it, it might fall over and ruin the graft. So what I do to provide rigidity is just put a little piece of ordinary electrical tape around it, and this seems to be adequate. The electrical tape will stretch as the graft grows, so that you don't really need to be too careful about when you take it off. I've left these on for a while. I usually get curious after a few months after they're growing well and take it off. So one time I took it off too early and ruined the graft, so it's important to let the graft grow well enough. You could probably leave this on for a whole year without any serious consequences. In any case, that's it. Now, in order to remember what this is, when I'm doing my grafting, I usually try to do several at a time, so I don't put the permanent marker as to what it is on. I do that more carefully later with an appropriate tag for grafting. But in this case, this is a Lee jujube. So I'll just mark Lee on a piece of masking tape. And put it where it can't do any damage. And where I'll be able to read it say a week or two, I'll come back and put a more permanent marker. And that is all it takes.
I'm Roger Meyer. I've been a member of California Rare Fruit Growers for probably more than 20 years. And I became active in reproducing different types of plants. What I'm going to show today is how to do air layering or marcotting. This is a method that, unlike grafting, which takes a piece of wood from one tree and puts it on the rootstock of another tree, we're going to make the mother tree produce roots right up in the tree. And that way we can take right from the mother tree and have an identical copy. So what I've got here is a longan tree, and air layering is usable mostly for tropicals or evergreen trees, but not everything will air layer. Now remember, I do not take this branch off of the tree, but this is part of the tree, and we leave it on the tree until it's ready to be taken off. And what I'm going to do is take a sharp knife, and I'm going to take some cuts on a straight area, and I'm going to go all the way around. And then about 3 inches above, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, take a pair of pliers and we're going to strip the bark off. Now's the time, if you have aggressions against trees or anything, take it out right here. And we're just going to strip the whole branch. Okay, and then I'm going to take my knife and get everything off, smooth it out, because what will happen if you don't get all the bark off, sometimes the tree is able to repair itself and never actually form roots. So I'm going to get it cleaned off nicely. good enough. Then I'm going to make 1 or 2 small slices here at the top. And then this is a compound called Dip and Grow. Comes in small bottles, less than $10. And I like to use these little daubers. Normally they're for piping, putting pipe dope on. And these smaller ones are hard to find, but well worth going to find them. And you'll see why in just a second. I just go in directly into the liquid. Now if it's the big dauber, it doesn't pop out very nice. This one comes out real nice. And all I'm going to do is the upper area. I don't need to go down this area at all. It's just this upper area. Coat it. I use 100% solution, although you can get away with lower percentages, and we're going to work on determining what percentages are really needed. Then we're going to get our air layer bag, and we're going to use straight peat, which I've moistened, and this is the straight peat, and you want to get it to just the point where it would give off water if it were squeezed very hard. And I'm going to add 10 to 15% of perlite rock, this material. Mix it in good. Then I get these bags that are about 4 inches by 6 inches, something like that. Fill them 2/3 full or so. Then take my knife, and we have a long piece of twine to seal it up. Take my knife, go all the way down, put this around the upper area of the plant, squeeze it, and it's best to leave a little area, and this will dry up and stop the formation of a new branch going up and reconnecting. And then take my twine, and we're just going to walk it around, sealing it as we go. And then just tying off. So that's what we're looking at for the air layer. Now we're going to take some aluminum foil to cover this up so that it'll be dark, so that the roots will want to form in there. So all I'm going to do is just go around, cover this up like so. And there's the air layer made. Now if you have trouble with crows or other big birds in your area, they love to see their reflection in the aluminum foil, and they will start pecking at this, and next day they'll have this ripped off. So in case that's a problem, just get a old t-shirt or other toweling, wrap around a couple of times. You don't have to be very neat about it. And then another piece of twine. A couple of times around. And there's the branch, still on the tree. And this will take a good 2 months to sometimes over a year, depending on the species of the plant that you're doing. So far I've been very successful at doing longans, lychees, Suriname cherries, even macadamias, although macadamia nuts take more than a year before they finally decide they want to set out their roots. Then, once the roots are formed in there, you just take a peek in there and see what happens. And here's a plant that was done 6 months ago, and this is a wax jambu that I cut it off the mother tree. And now we'll take off the aluminum foil. And you can see the roots in there where they formed heavily. And what we're going to do now is snip off this, take the twine off, take a pair of scissors and carefully cut all the way around. Take the bottom of the plastic off. Put this into a pan of water for 1 to 2 hours, so this will reabsorb a lot of water. And then just take it out and plant it into a 3 to 5 gallon pot. And within 2 months from here, you'll have a plant all ready to go. And that's air layering or marcotting.
This is a demonstration of a cleft graft. The cleft graft allows 4 cambium surfaces to be matched when the scion and rootstock is the same diameter. Always use scion wood which is the same diameter or smaller than the rootstock. The scion wood has been previously collected and stored in the vegetable drawer of the refrigerator. We are looking for year-old wood with buds that have not opened but have begun to swell. We will cut off the terminal end and trim off the leaf petiole. We will want 2 buds above the graft. More will lessen the energy to each bud. Leave a little over 1 inch for the graft area. Taking about 1.5 inches of parafilm and stretching it both lengthwise and width to about twice its original size. This will be wrapped around the area above the graft area to prevent desiccation. The loss of moisture would kill the graft. Pull the parafilm as you wrap it around to ensure that it sticks to itself. If the parafilm is not stretched, it will not adhere to itself. The rootstock is cut 6 to 8 inches above the soil. Judging the size of the rootstock to the scion wood to get the best cambium match. Neither the scion wood or rootstock is perfectly round, so you can orient them so that you can have the best match. Cut the scion wood in slanting cuts on opposite sides. Smooth cuts without bumps or grooves will give the best contact. Set the scion wood next to the rootstock to see how deep the cleft cut should be. You will want the cut only slightly deeper than the tapered scion. Place the knife on the center of the rootstock and move the knife slowly down. Then slide the scion wood in the groove of the rootstock and match the cambium on one side if the scion and rootstock were not a perfect match. Taking another piece of stretched parafilm, wrap the graft area to seal in the moisture. Be sure to cover any exposed cut areas. Using a rubber band which was cut from a 3.5 by 1/4 inch band, wrap the graft area, stretching it as you wrap the area. This will give you solid contact between the rootstock and scion wood. Write on a marker the variety and date of the graft. Usually in 4 to 6 weeks you will see a bud expanding and a leaf appearing. Depending on the scion wood and weather, it could take longer, even several weeks. It is not necessary to remove the parafilm. The buds will easily push through. I have even had new growth push right through the rubber bands. Grafting for about 20 years. The last 10 years have been down at the South Coast Field Station, which is part of the University of California Research and Extension Center. We're going to talk now about is one of the important things for grafting, and that's the scion wood. What you want to get in the way of scion wood is something about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, depending on where you're going to use it, whether it'll be on the small seedling rootstock or if it'll be stump grafting of an existing plant. The one thing you don't want to use, though, is a water spout which shoots up into the air from branches, because this will take 2 to 3 years before it will start having fruit on it. Before you start collecting your scion wood, you want to disinfect your tools between each tree. And I use alcohol, a bleach solution is very good also. So what we're looking for is something that has had fruit on it before, last year's growth, and take this and cut off a piece of the wood, maybe 8 to 10 inches long. And then we'll cut off the various leaves so that the scion wood will not dry out. What you can do each year is mark the branches that have had fruit on it, so you'll know what to take the scion wood from at the next time. So what we're going to do is look for small buds that are just developing at the various sites where the leaves were cut off, and we'll use these as our scion wood and cut to length. What we'll need to do is we'll cut about 1/4 of an inch at a slant just above the upper bud, and then look for having 2 buds above the graft, and then cut it straight across for at the lower end. This way you'll remember which way is up, and we'll be able to make the scion wood cut depending on what type of graft you'll be using. So we can take several of these cuts and we'll store them in a baggie. Okay, this is an avocado, and it's a little easier to see than the citrus in that there are 2 types of buds that will come out. One is the flower bud, which is round and plump, and a leaf bud, which is narrow and pointed. And this also shows you last year's growth by a ring of buds around there, which is called a whorl. And that was the end of last year's growth. So you can also see that you want to not wait too long on your buds where they get too plump and start to break out, and you'll start getting the flowers showing up, which are typically at the apical or end of the branch coming out. This is also about pencil size, so we can just take a cut here. And so this also will be where we'll take off the leaves to prevent desiccation. This will give us several good pieces of scion wood. We will not use the flower end, we'll just go ahead and cut those off and work with only those buds that haven't started to swell too much and therefore not usable. Here you can see very clearly the sharp pointed bud, which will become a leaf bud. Further up here you can see the bud that is quite round and plump. So there's a couple there. Here's one that has actually started to open up, and with an avocado that will eventually throw out long stems with multiple flowers on it. Be sure that you have 1 or 2 leaf buds above the graft area. As soon as you determine that one is a flower bud, you want to knock that off because it's going to be taking energy that needs to go into leaves to generate the food for the plant. Some of the tools that you'll need for collecting scion wood and preparing them are your clippers, knife. Here's a plane, I'll explain that. And of course, again, you want to make sure that all the tools that will come in contact with the Scion wood have been disinfected. And what we're going to do is, just before you use these in your grafting, you will come in and look for your buds. And here is a nice bud right here. And we'll cut it at the angle there, and then come down a ways and cut it again. And then to prevent desiccation even more, you might take a piece of parafilm and stretch it and cover the cut ends to keep the moisture inside. Now, normally you wouldn't have to do this, but on some more difficult plants that you might want to be grafting, you would need to do this. Also, on more difficult plants, 2 to 4 weeks ahead of time, of course, this is citrus and not or avocado, this is not a problem, but you can girdle it by cutting around and say about a 1/4 inch apart. Doing this 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time and peeling the bark off down to the cambium area. This is removing the phloem. And this will concentrate at the upper end the nutrients by not allowing them to flow through the phloem down to other parts of the plant. And so then when you are ready to graft, you'll just, or to take the Scion wood, you just cut it off at that point. Now the other thing is, some Scion wood, it is difficult to get a good even cut because the wood is very hard. And the ideal, of course, is to be able to cut it at one smooth cut. But sometimes it's easier said than done. And a trick that I learned was to take a small wood plane, and you can just take that and make some cuts there on each side. And now it's going to be a smooth single cut. So that you don't have any of the undulations that go across there with cutting it with a knife. This is only really necessary on a very hard wood. Now once you've set this up, you want to make sure that you mark it, and taking a baggie, you can write on here what it is, say a Moro orange, and the date that this is collected, and put each one of the varieties and even the same tree into the baggie. And an ideal place to keep it is in the vegetable compartment of a refrigerator, where it is cool and dark, and depending on the variety of the fruit that you're going to be grafting, can last anywhere from a month up to 6 months, sometimes even up to a year. The methods of cloning rootstock are several, but the method that we're using is the Frolic technique.
The Scion wood that is used is from trees that have been found to be resistant to the root rot. Whole fields sometimes are wiped out except for a single tree, which is called the escape tree. These escape trees are used for the clonal rootstock. The first step is to take a seed from a medium to large size avocado seed and cut the top off, and then take off some of the peel to help get water to the embryo, which is in the bottom of the seed. Here is some seedlings in various stages of preparation. Ones on the left being ones that have just been planted. The ones on the right are seedlings that have been in the etolation chamber, which is in the background. And then the ones in the far back are ones that have been grafted and wounded to produce the clonal rootstock. Here's the seedling coming out from the initial planting of a seed. Then the clonal rootstock is grafted to this seedling. And in 4 to 6 weeks, clonal buds will have opened and leaves are beginning to form. Once these have formed and we have several leaves, they are placed inside an etolation chamber, which is a chamber which will be totally enclosed, with no light coming in, and with a fine mist being sprayed on them periodically to keep them moist. After another 4 to 6 weeks, the seedling leaves are stretching out. There's a long distance between the inner nodes. The leaf, since they are not getting any light, are not producing the chlorophyll, and therefore the leaves are very yellowish. The newest leaves coming out have a red tint to them. Once this gets to 8 or 10 inches long, it is taken out, where the process of developing the roots will start. As you can see, the leaves are very yellowish. The green will eventually come back. Each one of these then, just above the graft portion, is cut with a knife to wound it, giving a slice about 3/4 of an inch long, and this is done in a couple of places on opposite sides. And IBA solution is then painted on the wounded area. This is typically 1% dip and grow. After the wound and IBA have been applied, a cup is put around the wounded area. The cup is a transparent cup using a soldering iron to melt the bottom hole in the cup, and then with a saw such as a bandsaw, a slit is made in one side through to the center so that it can be pulled around the growth. Here's a cup that's attached to a bamboo stick, and with the wounded growth, clonal growth, coming up through the cup. This is then filled with the peat moss perlite mixture, and as it continues to grow, you can see the leaves are beginning to turn green. And again, in another 4 to 6 weeks, roots will start forming around the wounded area, and this is allowed to grow until we have a good set of roots. Here you can see the roots that are growing up towards the side of the cup. With the cup removed, which is not what you normally do, but to show the root growth, you can see that they are elongating out. And if severed just above the graft area, it could be planted now as a rootstock that will be of the escape tree Clonal. Normally though, what is done is that it is left in the cup unsevered, and another graft of the final variety, such as a Hass or Reed, Pinkerton, some other variety, is then grafted on there. Doing this, you have not only the nutrients that are in the wound area, but also from the initial seedling. This is an example where it has been wounded in 3 different places, which would allow 3 different varieties to be grafted once it is severed from the main area. This is something that could be done at home without an ethylation chamber by taking a 1-gallon pot in the top left corner, showing the seedling there, growing roots, and then in figure 2 the seedling will start coming out, and then figure 3 shows go ahead and cut that and graft to it. Then to simulate a ethylation chamber, bamboo stakes could be set up there, and then black plastic draped over that and sealed around the bottom to keep the light out. Once then this graft has grown several inches and have several leaves on it, the black plastic can be removed, and then in figure 6 it shows the cup being attached, have wounded it prior to this, and put a cover over that to keep moisture in there. But this would be clear plastic, such as a 1-gallon Ziploc bag. Then finally, the grafted area of the clonal rootstock could be cut and eventually put into another pot to grow further and then graft to that in the normal way.